Thank you, Leigh. It's with great pleasure we introduce Michael, who you all know. He's referred to his great interactive analyses that he has made, and I invited him today, as he says himself. I didn't want him to prepare too much. I wanted him to be a kind of fly on the wall, listening to what we're saying, asking questions, and then I've asked him to make some kind of summaries and suggestions, which we'll draw to a conclusion at about 5:30. Michael.
It's a very strange experience to be asked to come and talk and told not to prepare anything. And I've also I've been making this PowerPoint you're going to see. I mean, I didn't, even though I was going to do it when I came, I was writing on paper. Then I thought, no, I'll put my paper down. I'll do something on the computer sketch notes. So I made some notes in Word. And I thought, well, what if I put them into PowerPoint? Then I could perhaps show them to people. But it's been done as you've been talking. Some of the things on there have been said since I wrote them down, or so superseded in a sense. Probably lots of typos in there, I'm sure. But I hope you've accepted it as something that's just been done on the fly as the session has gone on. And so what I hope to do is to sort of draw together a lot of the very exciting things that have been said today. It'll be a selection of them. And I apologise for any other lots of good things I'm sure I haven't got in here. It's just what happens to have got typed in and I've been listening. And I'm sure there's lots of very important things and exciting things that have been said that I haven't happened to get into the PowerPoint, so apologies to those people. Also, I should say, I mean, it is, I haven't tried to be neutral, even if I could be entirely, so some of this is my own personal view and reflection on it, which I hope will be stimulating. How long do you want me to talk for, roughly, Sam?
10 or 15.
Yes,
right?
that's all. Yes, yeah. So going back to the beginning of the day, and we had these questions from Leigh, and it strikes me that the first one, which tools, which approaches, is the one that actually arises for me out of the other questions. So by looking at which users we want to address and what our intentions are in the analysis and which works or genres we're going to look at, that will determine the tools and approaches. As I think I said in one of the points I made earlier, I don't see that we necessarily have one set of tools or one set of approaches. I think they will vary depending on which users, what the intentions are, and which works and which genres. I thought this morning was really exciting, and again, I'll probably miss some out of the list, but all the different types of music, the diversity of the repertoire, I think, I knew it before I came, but just to hear it all like that in quick fire succession was really exciting, and it may make analysis much more difficult, but I think we should rejoice in the fact that we've got this richness of music, if music is the right word, and then we should try and address it in analysis in whatever ways are appropriate. But I think that's something to be really excited about, that all that is there. Who for? And we've had various answers given. Someone, I can't remember quite who was saying about it, was to do with developing their own enjoyment of a work. And I think that for me, that's my starting point. I mean, I do things that I share with other people and publish. But for me, it often comes as wanting to develop my own enjoyment of a piece. And also to... I think help inform me and inspire me as a composer. As I think Manuela said, I think of myself first and foremost as a composer, and I do the analytical work I do as a way of helping me develop my compositional ideas, although I often find the time that takes gets in the way of me doing the composing, but never mind. We might also want it to aid, for want of a better word, I put out as general listeners. We might want to help the reception of this music in the general public by what we do. It might be to inform musicological study, so there's a basis for musicological study, having studied works in more detail. We've had people from a teaching context, and that's another of the reasons I develop it. I originally did analysis not only for my own use, but to present to students, perhaps student composers, but perhaps students of the history of music or whatever. And we've talked about ethnography, and it's valid in its own right as a way towards helping an ethnographic study. So many different people that the analysis might be for. And I think the range of expertise, as again we've heard today, is very broad, that we might need musicologists, sociologists, traditional music analysts, technologists. So something I'm very keen on is that the technology that's been used to create this music should be part of the study of the music and needs to be brought into it. Cognitive scientists, composers, listeners and performers, all taking a part in contributing expertise. And so it may be that we need teams of people bringing in different expertise when we undertake an analysis. Some of the issues to do with analysis, we've heard examples of works that are variable or transient, the idea of having a fixed artwork there that you set about as an object that's solid and you can work on it isn't always the case now. Top right hand corner there, is there just one analysis of a work? Dennis and I were talking after lunch, and he was telling me that he has a slightly different view of the division intersections of wind chimes from what I do. In fact, we've talked about this before, so it wasn't a surprise to me that he didn't, I think, originally see it in sections anyway. But I don't think either of us minds. Certainly my view is that it's good to have many different analyses, and I think it enriches the whole area if different people are looking at things in a different way, as long as obviously they're done thoughtfully. I think sometimes traditionally analysis has been thought of as trying to find the one solution to a puzzle. That's certainly not my view of analysis. It's seeing what we can gain from many alternative views of a work. I do think in some analyses of electroacoustic music that I've come across, there is a danger of losing depth compared with many acoustic analyses. And I think we need to be careful of this, because the media is so different. It can end up as a more superficial description, and rather going into an in-depth analysis of how the music works. So I think that's something we need to be aware of. Music, of course, passes in time, and so it's very difficult to know how to capture it when it's passing in time, particularly when we haven't got a notated form to start with normally. And I forget if it was Leigh or Simon raised the issue. I think it was Leigh raised the issue of segmentation. And more recently, Simon said something, I think, about processors. Segmentation, I think, is often very important, but I think there are situations where a work or part of a work is a result of a process, or perhaps layered processes, and we perhaps need a different approach, and not always to assume that segmentation is going to be the answer. Another thing that came up today that I think was quite important: can the language of our analyses sometimes put people off or colour their experiences in a negative way? And so I think we need to be very careful about how we do that. Again, it depends on the audience and who we're writing for, but if we're certainly writing for the general listener or for school pupils or for students, then perhaps that is of particular significance. And then what if the sound is less important than the experience, place and memory, as Catherine was saying? I think we need to bear that in mind and not always assume that traditional modes of analysis are going to be right. We've already talked about there might not be a fixed object for analysis, but also there might not be an unambiguous author with plunderphonics or with improvised works where things are shared, and that again confuses the situation. It's another issue we need to take into account. Fairly recently someone mentioned about visual aspects and about representation. That's something I feel very strongly about and have written about before. I do think that it's very difficult to represent the transient and multi-dimensional aspects of music simply on a two-dimensional page. Certainly if it's in isolation, if it's combined with words, if it's combined with musical examples, and as I've already said, I think if you can combine graphics as we can today in software with sound and with words, then it becomes much more powerful, so your diagram isn't just a static image on the page. It might be an image that can change and be manipulated. It might be that image can actually play sound when you move the mouse over it or click on parts of it. So the visual can be combined with the aural, but there's still this basic problem that music is often so multi-dimensional that it's very hard to capture it all in the visual. And therefore the limitations of the graphic, and also I think the limitations of words. And as I've already said, I think if the diagrams are interactive, if the text is hypertext where it links to sounds, all those sorts of things help to get over some of the limitations of those. A multimodal approach, as someone was saying very recently. Didn't get very far with developing this slide, but it strikes me it's very important to acknowledge that all kinds of boundaries are breaking down. Boundaries between composer and listener, analyst, performer, programmer. In some situations, all these different things become intermingled in different ways. Likewise, science and music and art becoming intermingled in different ways, and the boundaries between art and popular culture also becoming very blurred. And that again must change our approach to analysis of certain works, I think. So how might we move towards a solution, or perhaps varied solutions? And as I say, at this point particularly, some of this is my own personal view, but and the sort of thing I've been thinking of over a few years in developing interactive aural analysis, but I think there's a lot in common with things people have said today and with the software that Mike and Pierre have shown us. If the media of the music has expanded from being a score which is performed by acoustic instruments, to software and hardware and so on, isn't that a sign that we should also develop the media for analysis too? And the use of software, the use of the internet, as we've seen in the software examples this afternoon, I think is very important. Software, for example, opens up all kinds of new possibilities for conducting an analysis and presenting it. It's also helpful to make analysis that is open-ended. I mean, the Orimer project allows different people to contribute different things. Software that allows people to play with the sounds, to manipulate them, rather than solely have to take the author's view of the piece as it stands. So